Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? The shadow knows.
I don't know why I was Riverside to fix that. All right, welcome everybody back to another Beyond the Possible, number 34. And sorry for the little late start, but it happens. It's all good. We are here. Um, got James back, of course, and we have the Goat Spiker, Miranda here also. We're looking very, I've been very looking forward to this show. Really is. It's pretty amazing. You know, I watch some of your shows and stuff like that, and the way you go and do your hunting and observing, and plus you have multiple locations you own that's haunted, so that's pretty cool. And you got a ghost, I mean not ghost, a cat jumping in the background. That's even
I do. I do. That's Miss
mine is
Sally,
asleep
our
over
jail
here.
cat.
Yeah, mine is asleep over
Oh,
here, right here. You can kind of barely see him. There you go. Shadow popped her head up when I touched her.
they just have a way of showing up.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Shadow will start walking in front of the thing. She, was- I had to make my camera up higher because she stop in front of the camera with her tail up sometimes, and I'm like, so,
Actually, it's funny you say that because my cat literally is just walking right here beside us. She heard you say her name here, and so she's come up to uh, say hi to everyone.
for sure, for sure.
But thank you so much for having me on, Ricky. I've been looking forward to this. I know we have a mutual friend, Miss Jess Rogie, and I'm really honored that she thought to suggest me for your show.
For sure, for sure. I love Jess. Yeah, she's one of the ones who kind of helped me when I first get started and stuff like that. I went on her show, and she kind of helped me point in the right direction and connect me with a bunch of people and stuff. She's really awesome. Hoping to see her
Yeah.
start her show again eventually. It'd be pretty cool. But I'm trying to nudge her, like, come on, you can do it. You can do it. I was like, you can come back on here if you want to. She was on my 100th episode for my Wednesday show where I do the conspiracy stuff, and she
When I
was actually part of that. And so maybe eventually we'll see. But yeah, she's awesome. She really is.
Absolutely. Yeah. But yeah, I am actually here at one of my locations, the historic Scott County Jail. We're up here in the main office, which is an old bank building that was built in 1909. It's got the beautiful old bank facade, the original vault, and it is just about 200 feet from the jail itself. And so, if anyone has seen what that looks like, it's a really unique structure, a sandstone castle that is located here in the middle of the Appalachian Mountains. So, a lot of great history, a lot of great paranormal activity, and I'm looking forward to telling y'all a little bit more about that.
For sure, for sure. And James, how are you doing this evening?
Okay, glad to be here. And I don't think I mentioned it because we were getting things set up, but nice to meet you, Miranda. And I unfortunately have not had the chance to check out a lot of your stuff yet. I do plan on that. Just you know how it is when you're doing things. There's only so much time. Um, but
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, I'm really curious about that location you were talking about and just your experiences in general.
Absolutely. Yes. So yeah, my name is Miranda, and I'm better known as the Ghost Biker. Been investigating for the paranormal for a little over 15 years now, and been a location owner or a location co-owner actually for the past almost 5 years. So it's been an interesting ride, an interesting shift in careers.
I can imagine. Just taking that, you know, initial, like, just that gamble, just like, you know, taking that step to, go on your own kind of thing, or even with a co-partner, there still is it's risky stuff,
It is.
especially, I mean, you said 5 years, so that was, you took
Yeah.
it on right there in the heart of COVID time.
Absolutely. It was September of 2021. And so that's kind of the thing here in East Tennessee. We never really shut down as bad as the rest of the country did,
Right.
but we were essentially kind of right in the heart of the pandemic. My business partner always kind of jokes whenever she's telling the story about how we opened. And she's like, of course, opening right in the middle of a pandemic, what else could go wrong, And the majority of the people who come here are actually people who are from all across the country, not so much locals, but people from across the country. And so we actually had quite a few people that was at our grand opening and that were coming in right there in the very beginning because I think they were looking for something to do and ready to get back out there. So 2022 was a little bit slower than I think a normal time would be if we were opening any other time than during COVID, only because you still had a lot of the rest of the country that was still kind of shut down. So we had a slightly slower start, but the paranormal is honestly what kept us alive and kept our doors open because that really, you could do in small groups. And as soon as we opened the doors, we had bookings every weekend for that first year. And so that really kept us afloat and helped to get us more well known with our day tours and our history tours. So it was by far a definitely interesting time to open.
That's yeah, no doubt. Yeah, I'm right here in North Mississippi, right here south of Memphis, and yeah, we had like just like 2 weeks or something like that. We kind of like
Mhm.
stopped for a second when at first, and then we're all. But yeah, I traveled all the place. I went and went to Gatlinburg. I think 21. I think I was out there in Gatlinburg, and um, yeah, I still went all over the place and went there and did what I want to do. Uh, but yeah, it was pretty chaos. A lot of places in the world, in the states, like some of my friends were telling me just like how they couldn't do nothing or they had to do all this, jumping through hoops and stuff. And
Mhm.
I'm like, I'm just glad I was down here where they pretty were one of the most lenient states there was at
Yeah.
during the time.
Yeah, we still did ghost biker events. I had motorcycle rides that in 2020. There was only one event that I closed down, and that was a small event at an antique shop in the middle of November. It's kind of close quarters, but other than that, we were doing Harley events and doing all kinds of stuff for Ghost Biker. It actually, in a way, I don't want to say helped, but in a way, like I said, people were just raring to go and get out. And when you're on a motorcycle, you don't have to worry about any of that. So we were doing meet and greets and motorcycle rides and all that leading up to it through 2020 and 2021 before opening the business here. Um, so yeah,
Nice. Yeah, there's some beautiful roads out that way too, and to be
absolutely.
riding. I never rode a motorcycle through them, but I took them on cars and trucks and everything else, and it's some beautiful, beautiful roads.
Yeah, we're here on the Upper Cumberland Plateau, which is a really unique area here in East Tennessee. It's probably, I would have to say, one of the more beautiful areas or one of the most beautiful areas here in East Tennessee, because it's very mountainous and it's a much more unique structure. It's not the same as the Smoky Mountains, but it's and definitely not as crowded, but it's definitely a unique area when it comes to the people, the folklore, the superstitions, the legends, and then just the beautiful surrounding area. And so you can't go northeast, south, or west without hitting an amazing motorcycle road. And we try to kind of recommend that and play off that with our motorcycle rides that we do here at the jail. Um, we are really blessed with the opportunities that we have here.
I bet, yeah, that's pretty cool. Like I said, I know I've been through that area a bunch of times over the years, and it's amazing, amazing country for sure. And yeah, like I said, the folklore and stuff like that is all through, especially Tennessee, just all the way through Tennessee, from from places in Memphis to Shiloh and all the way across. It's rich. If people don't know, it's really rich in their paranormal history for sure.
Absolutely. And that's really what got me into the paranormal was the folklore, the superstitions, the omens, the storytelling side of things. My grandmother was really one that really got me into this, because from the time I could walk down to her house, which was right next door to my house where I grew up, right from the moment I could walk down there, I was spending time on the porch listening to her talk about some of the folklore and the mountain haunts and stories of that nature. So that's where I fell in love with the paranormal, was from the storytelling side of things, keeping this folklore and keeping these legends and stories from the area or some of these lesser known areas alive. And so, my librarian growing up in school also really kind of played a part in that too. At Halloween, she always went above and beyond to talk about she talked about the Bell Witch, which is a very common story here in the Southeast from Adams, Tennessee. And it's true story. But she would tell that. And then she also, in our elementary school, we had some local haunts there in the elementary school. That was a local doctor who was murdered by one of our law enforcement officers while they were showing a movie on the second floor in the 1920s. And so there were stories that went along with that haunted our elementary school. So for years, anyone that walked those halls knew those stories. So I carried a lot of that with me growing up, spending time in libraries, spending time talking to locals in the areas that was at, learning their stories. And so that's really the way that I come at it with my episodes and the different places that I investigate. They may not be the most well known locations, but I love using the paranormal and after dark tourism to get people interested in some of these places and utilize it for travel, as well as kind of helping out some of these lesser known locations.
Yeah, that's. I really do think that there's at any given time there can be anomalous things happening anywhere, everywhere. I mean, if there's probably been at least something weird that's happened in every part of this planet that you could want to look at. I mean, it just seems like everywhere does have that history, and there always seems to be, whether it's through because of traumatic events or not, there seem to be just weird things that happen at different times, and it can be subtle things, it can be extreme, but I don't even know if there's such a thing as a place that hasn't had some weird event or weird phenomenon happen there at some point in time, and probably won't have it again at some point. I'm sure it will.
Oh, 100%. And I mean, you nailed it with that. That's one of the things that I always like to tell people when I'm doing lectures and presentations is, especially as a biker, I always tell people, utilize those maps. And I guarantee if you close your eyes and touch any spot on a map, you're not going to find a place that doesn't have some type of interesting story. It might just be local, but you never know. It may also be regional. And I like to challenge people to the fact that most of the time they can't find a place that doesn't have some type of interesting story.
Yeah, definitely. It's and I do like what you talked about with your grandma, because my experience with all this did start with an experience, but as soon as I got to be older and I told my grandma about all these things because of something I saw at her house, she opened up to me about some things that happened at her sister's house, and telling me about just weird things that happened there, and that was in another town here in Michigan where I live. And I could sit there and listen to those same accounts of experiences and things that they had happened over and over and over again, even though it was like a handful of things. I mean, I guess relatively speaking, and I
Mhm.
never got tired of that. And it's one of those things I wish that I had the technology at the time and the thought to record those things, because now I only have fragments of those stories because it's been 20 some years since I we talked about that, and she's passed now some years ago. So, but I mean, those fragments are still there. I still remember bits and pieces to this day.
Absolutely. It's one of those things you don't really appreciate it until it's gone because, I tried to record some of that and I was young. I was when my grandma passed away, I was very fortunate to have her up until I was 23 years old. So I had a lot of time with her and she was born back in 1908. So when I was born, she was already, a senior citizen at that point, but had such an amazing memory, sharp as a tack, and always telling amazing stories. And so I wish, while I did appreciate it then, I wish I appreciated it then as much as I do now.
Yes. Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah, we were talked about it before. Me and James would talk about it, and I had to twist my mom's arm a little bit and like get her to come on, like tell the stories and stuff like that. And that was one of our things we were talking about. I was like, we need to get them older stories, and I know she still remembers a lot of them from her grandmas and great grandmas and stuff. And she finally did. And she said, "Well, I'm only going to be on there for 5 minutes," and then she was like 45 minutes until Dad got dinner ready or whatever. But like, yeah, I agree. We need, these old stories and stuff, and it's good to get them out there and people talking about them, and and I like this being able to do this so you can get them stories out to where where anybody can see them and and hear these
Absolutely.
amazing tales.
And my first season of my show with Ghost Biker Explorations, that's exactly how that started. It was based on local legends and some stories from the book 13 Tennessee Ghosts. It and it was one of those where I was living at the time. The Bleeding Mausoleum, which was the story of the Cragmiles family, and so you have this mausoleum that sits in the middle of town, and a lot of people don't always. I mean, they drive past it every day. They don't always know the story that's connected with it, but it's this beautiful Carrara marble mausoleum that sits there in the middle of Cleveland, Tennessee, there in southeast Tennessee. And the legend goes that every time it rains, the mausoleum bleeds. Now it does have some red imperfections in the marble, but the story was always told that, and it was told in the book as well as told by some of the locals, that every time that if every time a member of the Crag Miles family died, more spots appeared on the mausoleum. And so you could go and you could walk around the mausoleum 7 times, and you could ask them to come out and play with you, and some interesting things would happen. And then just the story itself about that family and how the mausoleum was built and then how each member passed away and was put in there is just fascinating history in and of itself. So my goal with my show was to not only test and see if this legend was true and if we would get activity, but to also go in, share this history, and also share a little bit of stories about the town itself to try to encourage people to maybe travel to the area and see it for themselves. And I wanted to keep the episode short. I think that particular episode was about 15 minutes in length. That way, people could watch it and not really feel like they were uh, getting bogged down, and they wanted more at this point after that episode. So the second episode covered the story of the Phantom Monk, who was a monk who died in a train wreck there in the 1860s, there in the Charleston, Cleveland, Tennessee area. And the legend goes that he perished in this train wreck. And so the doctor, he went and he was working this train wreck because when the train derailed, it was due to a flood. And so there was a lot of people that either were killed or injured in this. So a lot of the homes there in Charleston, Tennessee was used for makeshift morgues, makeshift hospitals. And so the doctor spent a week treating these folks that were there, and he found this monk that had allegedly passed away. And so it was said that he took the body to his house and dissolved the skin from the bones in a bathtub, and he used the bones in his medical practice because it was really kind of hard to come by a skeleton in and they used real skeletons at the time. So my goal in that episode was to take this story that people in the Southeast region knew and test the area where the train wreck happened. But then my videographer had a connection to someone who had gotten a tub that fit that same era from the doctor's family. And so, was it the exact tub? I don't know, but I wanted to test and see. And so we got some pretty interesting evidence from that. The family did allow us to come in and investigate that. And then we were getting activity inside of the home where the tub was stored. And so that led into the next episode. So the first season was really just kind of testing some of these stories from that book and testing the local legends as well as a couple residential cases. And then it just went on from there. We did pepper in a few commercial locations, like Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary, which is a really, big historical location here. Also, Revenant Acres, Willow's Weep, a lot of larger places we did cover, but for the majority of the past 8 seasons, everything has essentially been either lesser known or places that have never been investigated before, and that's been a real treat to be able to do.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I am curious if you've come across this or what you think about it when it happens. When you have a legend or a folklore about something, and then let's say an apparition in particular, and then you come across that apparition in investigations, but then you are not able to find anything more as far as actual historical evidence of any basis for that folklore. I'm wondering what you think that means about that kind of situation, how that happens, because I have my own ideas that I've developed over time as far as just based on just what I've heard and read and researched over the years. And I'm always curious how that works because I really it's fascinating to me.
Oh, absolutely. That's a great question. And I've got several thoughts on that because, we do also kind of experience with, being a location owner, and we have tons of people that come in, and we're able to, when somebody experiences something, be able to put that information down and see if other people experience something similar. So that's kind of how it is with this folklore, and testing that. Now, I'm always the type of person that just because I don't get activity or just because I don't see something that would correlate with the story, doesn't make me think that it's not true or that it didn't happen. There's always the possibility that they didn't want to communicate with me, or my methods that I was using to test might not quite be the right methods that is going to trigger that activity. So there's always that possibility. The other thought is, some of these stories have been passed down from many, many years ago. Some of them could be up to 100 years ago. And so in that case, maybe something was lost in the translation as it was passed on down, and things may have changed. But then there's also the situation where, because things change, could someone have essentially, I don't want to say change the haunting, but we do have the ability, I feel, this is just my personal opinion, to create our own hauntings as well, or tulpas, or, create something in the sense to where maybe something else that's there takes on the identity of what everyone is saying. If someone is continually saying it and there's something else there and they think this is what and the spirit knows that that is what gets attention. So maybe they start acting upon that, or we think that's what they're giving. I think there's a lot of possibilities with that. And there have been some instances where you go and you try to test this, and maybe it don't quite happen like the legend has it happening, but you have your own experience. And sometimes those personal experiences are kind of hard to qualify and quantify. I hope that answered your question. I know I was kind of going around and around there.
No, you're fine. That's all. It's all valid. And yeah, I'm always curious when it comes to cases where there's a famous historic famous haunting, and then but there's not a lot of historical evidence for it. And I always go along two lines there. Either the historical records somehow got lost or damaged,
Mhm.
or there is that. I think I do agree. There is that possibility of, especially in famous cases or locations, just hundreds and thousands of people over decades visiting a place and being told the same or similar stories, and all that,
Mhm.
those emotions and thoughts and all that they put together either
Mhm.
can make something, and or like you said, some other being that's already there can take on that appearance. So yeah, I totally agree with that, and I find all that fascinating. I I'm actually going to be starting here in this next year a local group in my town where I live to look at folklore and
Mhm.
haunting stories about hauntings and all that, just to get all that sort of hopefully recorded in the podcast form. But even
Mhm.
if it's just to get more people to talk about that, would be good. But
Absolutely.
I would love to have a podcast sort of based on that too, of our meetings and discussions and stuff eventually.
Absolutely. I mean, I love hearing all the different theories behind it. And one of the things to kind of tag off on top of that is there's been several instances to where here where we're at, the paranormal has helped us to learn more history about the location. And, anyone that doesn't see the paranormal as valid, or that thinks, it's just kind of silly, they're not looking at it from all perspectives, because I can tell two stories about how the paranormal has helped us fill in historical gaps. And one of those is here at the jail. We have had up to 6 lynchings here at the jail, and these were mob mountain justice lynchings. They were basically somebody was allegedly, or someone allegedly committed a crime. They were brought to the jail, they were put in the jail, and then before they could get their day in court, a mob of anywhere from 25 to 50 people would either they would either fake a emergency, or they would say they had an inmate they were bringing in. Either way, they would overtake the jailer and then go in, get their inmate, and take them and lynch them on various parts of the property. And so, one of our most famous ones, which was the lynching of Jerome Boyett, a mob had busted in and they had beat the jailer up when they took him out and executed him and Harvey Winchester. Well, we had a guy, J.H. Gason, who wrote a book about this exact event that happened. And so he had given us an early release copy of the book itself, called High Winds West for Rome. And my business partner and I were reading it. And so the very night that we had been sitting there kind of proofreading it and reading over the copy, we had a team investigating. And so the team was using an Ovilus 5. And in a certain area, they actually got the word anvil 3 different times. And so this was our first year that we had been open. And so, as they were leaving, we asked what they had happen, and they said, we got the word anvil 3 different times over here in this area. What could that mean? And I said, I wonder if it's a name, because I picked up the book. Now, the book had not been released, and I said, this story is told by a character by the name of Anvil Clemens. It's a very interesting and odd name. So I said I would reach out to the author. And so when we reached out to him to talk about the proof copy that he had given us, um, he was just absolutely shocked because he said, he goes, "This is a copyright character. I changed the name of the original jailer that was on duty that night. The jailer that was on duty, his name was Ethan, and he had been beat so bad by the mob whenever they came into the jail that he got the name Anvil because they said it looked like he had been beat like an anvil. And so nobody knew. No one had read the book.
Wow.
Nobody knew this character. And so I was shocked. And the event where they got the name was where the mob had busted in. It was in the side room and also right in the foyer there. So that allowed us to go through and really kind of research Ethan and find out more about that night, and then find out, about Anvil. So that's why the author used that name. So then, of course, the book is released, and the author always tells. We've had him on our podcast before, and he's like, that really convinced him. He was never really much of a believer in spirits, and he said, clearly somebody here was trying to tell us something. The other instance is at our other location, which that branch of our company is called Historic Rugby After Dark. It's in the village of Historic Rugby, which is about 20 minutes from here. It's an old British utopian village. And I'll tell more on the history of that location later, but we caught a picture of a child in one of the homes that we allow people to investigate. We caught it on one of our lantern tours. And it's a very defined picture of this young man. You can see his jawline. You can see he's wearing a bow tie. He's wearing a jacket, and it's a really clear picture that was taken from the street. And so while we were doing the tour, before we actually went into the house, we couldn't figure out who this kid is. And for years, the administration at the village itself had seen a kid inside this building. I had even seen it when we were doing an event over there in the upstairs area where people are not allowed to go. And so while I was doing the cemetery tour and researching the different folks that are in the village cemetery, there's a stone, and on the stone is a picture of a boy by the name James Hiram Lowhorn. And he was 15 years old, and it says on his stone, died by accidental gunshot. And so when you go to research this young man, he died during a hunting accident. And so his cousin's gun had accidentally gone off, shot him in the stomach, and he ends up passing away. But we had a TV show, Haunted Discoveries, that was filming there, and they started asking some questions, and they ended up finding out that the person that they were talking to, his name was Hiram. And so after they found out that this was Hiram, we showed them the picture that had been caught on our tour. And when you put it right up next to the picture from the gravestone, it looks just like Hiram. Same jawline, same hair, same type of attire. And so now it's caused the folks from the village, as well as us and multiple people who have traveled to the area, to research this young boy. When you're dealing with a haunted village, you have hundreds of people that you could have interaction with. Same with the jail itself. But this is just an example of how it's allowed us to learn more about some of the different individuals, learn their history, learn their story, and be able to keep their stories alive by telling those to other folks that may not be aware of them or the area itself.
Yeah, I love that happens, and I've heard of similar things, and I think that is amazing to get that kind of verification. I I have a it's not a historical thing so much, but my my grandparent that what used to be my grandparents' house, there was a woman apparition that was seen there by a few people in the family over the years, including myself. And my grandma was one of the people that saw this apparition, and she just happened to go over to visit the neighbors one day, the neighbor's wife, one day, saw a picture of that same woman in the house. Turns out that one woman was the original owner of the house that my grandparents later bought.
Wow.
And she was wearing the same clothes in the picture as she was seen in by my grandma, my dad, and my cousin and I. And my grandma and my dad saw her before, obviously before my cousin and I were ever born. Um, and then my cousin and I saw her years later. And so we know, I mean, we're 99% sure we know who this was. And it
Hmm.
was the original owner of the house and the neighbor husband's mom.
That's amazing. I mean, when you're able to go and validate that, either because of what you saw or because of a picture or even just because of the history that you have found research on, it's really amazing. And to me, it really energizes me and motivates me to even try to learn more. Because to me, that's the side of the paranormal that I'm the most interested in, is being able to find out this, validate it through the history, and find out more about these stories.
Yeah, definitely. And I love it when it happens sort of, when you're not planning for it even too. I mean, even when you're investigating, obviously you know this, you don't know what you're going to get, if you're going to get anything at all sometimes. So I love it when it happens, and you literally, no one can say, well, you must have. I mean, not anyone can say anything, but no one can really logically say, well, you must have planned that.
Yeah.
How? How do we plan these things? To happen.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite seasons that I did was season 7 of my show Ghost Biker Explorations, and so I kind of changed my format at season 6. And on season 6, that was about the time we opened these locations. And so I started doing my investigations live. And so I did a whole season where I traveled to North Georgia every Tuesday night during the month of October. And I investigated all antique stores. So it was antique stores, oddity shops, and collector stores. So, and by collector stores, I did a comic book shop for the very last night on the finale of the season. Well, what was interesting about these places was that there was so much potential for paranormal activity. You had the story, the history of these locations themselves. One was a former funeral home. One was part of the gold rush down in Dahlonega. Another was like a recovery farm, um, an old bank, a five and dime store. I mean, there were stories that related before these became antique shops. And then you have thousands of items that are in there that could potentially trigger activity. And so I was interested to go into these places and see what was going to bring out that activity. And the second location that I was at, which was down in Commerce, Georgia, we did an antique shop down there, and it was pretty amazing because we had the ovilus, and then we had some flashlights set up. We had the SLS camera. We had multiple tools, and we went into this, and this was the one that was an old funeral home. And so we went into one of the rooms that it was all kids stuff. And so on the ovilus, I got the word angel. And honestly, this was one of the investigations that made me kind of really change my mind on the ovilus itself. But it said angel. And so I'm sitting there trying to figure out, um, was your name Angel? Was it a nickname? What, or I'm sorry, it said angle, not angle, or not angel, but it said angle. So I was sitting there thinking, did you mean angel? Was this a nickname? What was this? And then right after it said bank. And so I was like, okay. And so I went and I thought, well, I'm going to kind of look around in this room. And so as soon as I said something about an angel instead of angle, one of my little mini mag lights just lights up right over off to the side. And so I turned another flashlight on and went over to where that flashlight was. And wouldn't you know, on the shelf, we start looking, and there is an angel sitting there. And of all things, that angel is actually a bank. It's one of those that you put the coins in. And the person who had written, so I find this angel bank and I said, is this what you wanted me to find? And written on that, I kid you not, written on the tag, they had misspelled angel and spelled it angle. And we had it right there on the live. And so here I am holding this angel bank labeled angle bank. And that's exactly what the ovilus had told me to find. And so, of course, I ended up buying that item and taking it with me. But it really kind of changed the way I investigate with the ovilus. But it was just kind of one of those incredible moments, as simple as it was and as non-creepy as it was. I don't know how you can deny that, you know? So we had a lot of interesting experiences like that during that season. And that's probably why that's my most favorite season that I did, because it gave me the opportunity to promote all of these different stores that are down in the northeast and northwest Georgia area. But then also go in, find out this unique history, meet some great folks, and investigate a couple really cool locations that no one had ever investigated before.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead, Ricky. Yeah, I've talked a lot already.
You're good, James. I know you're enjoying the show, James. That's all. But yeah, that's we've talked about that, like like antique stores and stuff, and I know me and James both have had situations like going around and I had one a while back when I was walking through. That's one of my like new hobbies. I also like train MMA fighters, so I travel a lot for fights and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And so I go around and anywhere I go, I always try to stop at an antique store or something like that, at least one. And and I went to one time, and I'm sitting here, I'm like, I just had a bad feeling, and I turned and looked, and it was just like it had a whole booth of occultist stuff, had Ouija boards
Mhm.
and all kinds of stuff there. I'm like, oh, it's time. It said hi to me. Let me get out of here. But there is a lot of like possible for sure. I absolutely agree with you, the activity, because there's so many items and who knows, and that's
Mhm.
where I got most of my mass behind me from antique
Mhm.
stores. So, you know, and it and we're I know I was talking on a show just the other day and was talking about it. Um, I was on somebody else's show. I was the Paranormal Prism show, and I was talking about that. I was like, it's one of them things you do have to be careful. Like if you
Mhm.
going to antique stores, you can bring something home that you weren't really trying to bring home, and but that's
Mhm.
pretty cool that the Angel Bank that's it is one of them things that's just kind of like, hey, if even if you're a skeptic, it's kind of hard to deny that happening, and just the coincidence, or well, it's just a coincidence. That's a lot of coincidences lining up there together. That's
A
a little more.
lot. Yeah, and to me, it always goes. We got to be very creative during those episodes, because you go in and that's the thing about the Ovilus 5, for instance, is it only has a limited amount of words that it has inside of it. So you have to really sit and think about when those come up. Is it mumbo jumbo? Because sometimes it can seem just very random. But if you sit and look, sometimes certain words that they say don't always mean what they're saying, because they don't have a word for it in the box. An example of that here is our largest town nearby is Oneida. Well, in the jail, we were getting the name Ida a lot on that Ovilus. And it's like, I can't find very much information on Ida. But then we realized, once we kind of sat and started looking, that maybe they're talking about Oneida, but there's no word in here for that. And so we would ask questions, where are you from? And then it would respond, Ida. So it's kind of it's neat to be able to sit and validate your equipment and work that way, and also go in and be creative, because don't just take it at face value at what it's saying. You're in this whole store with thousands of items and an amount.
Uh-oh.
You,
There we go.
ah, did I drop off?
Just for a
Yeah.
second.
Yeah.
I think I had a call come through. And so, and it paused my recording. Anyways, so yeah, if you just take it and don't take it at face value and really kind of try to use some discernment and use some research, you can find some pretty interesting things.
Yeah, I was wondering about that with the Ovilus and similar devices, because I went on a couple of public investigation events years ago with a group in my area in Michigan here, and they had something. I'm not sure the exact type or the name of the device they had. I forget now, but it said my first name, James, a few times throughout
Mhm.
a couple of different nights that we went on with them. It said my first name, and there was no. They didn't mention any historical figure that they knew of in that site that had the name James. And so I was just wondering. I was curious if those devices do come with names, but I would think they would not. But I don't know.
I mean, I don't know. I know I can't remember the exact number of words that's in this one. Um, but yeah, I mean, I know they do have so many programmed into it. But then, of course, there's a lot of newer devices too,
Right.
that's got some different criteria to it. But I just had too many things lately here at the jail and in other places on where we've been filming the show, that I don't believe in coincidence. And some of those things are a little too hard. Like some conspiracy theories, some things have to just line right up perfect. And you're like, how can all these things line up perfect and not be true, So,
Absolutely. Yeah, that's just too many. Like that one in the story that you just told that's just too many, and too many coincidences lined up. There's just that was pretty amazing, for them to with the flashlight and bringing you over to that section to and then being exactly
yeah.
what he was saying. That's wild.
Yeah, and for it to even be spelled wrong, on the tag, that's what was kind of wild to me. I'll tell you another instance where we had that same kind of thing line up. The season before that, I was investigating the old Fentress County Jail over in Jamestown, Tennessee. And I had the opportunity to go there 2 weeks in a row. And it's not a place that's open for investigations, but they allowed me to come in. And the history there, they did house Billy Dean Anderson, who was he was a notorious murderer, and he was wanted by the FBI. And then he was an escape artist as well. He had escaped, and he spent I want to say 5 years, but I may be off on that number, hiding out in a cave. And so they've done a lot of documentaries and such on him. He was housed there at the jail, and while he was in the cave hiding out over that time, he was an amazing artist. And so he painted like over 300 pictures of Jesus Christ. And so, and then that was kind of his main thing he painted, but he also did some other stuff. And so one of the things I like to do is take trigger items, like a lot of folks. And so I went in. I had got a pack of paintbrushes, and I never said what I had because I don't like to ask leading questions. Anything that could be coincidental. And so while I was in there, I had the spirit box running, and I also had the Ovilus at one point in time. And so I was first using the spirit box, and I pulled out one of those paintbrushes and I held it up, and I said, I'm holding something in my hand. I said, if you can tell me what I have in my hand, you can have this. And across the spirit box, as clear as can be, it said paintbrush, mine. And I was like, okay, did you say? And so I kind of let it go at that. And then I put it in my pocket, and then I went into one of the cells. It was probably about 10 minutes later, and I had the obelisk. And so I'm sitting there, I pull it out again, and I said, I'm holding something in my hand. And I said, if you can tell me what it is, you can have it. And as soon as I was sitting there, the obelisk said, paint. And I was like, okay, it's yours. But it was on two different devices, and I never said anything like, "Oh, I hear you're a good artist." Nothing leading to what that could be. But I did address Billy Dean Anderson, and I did tell him he could have that. And so, again, I have no explanation unless, they can truly sit there and see what we have. We also did a card game that night, where I put 6 cards face down, and I just lifted one up in front of the camera, and I had the spirit box going, and I said, if you can name the number, the number, the suit, or the color, you'll win the game. And so out of, I believe it was 3 or 4 hands, I can't remember, that I had dealt out and picked up. We actually had 2 positive things named, and I believe one was king. There might have been 3 actually. One was king, one was 7, and one said black. And so, right after I picked it up, Spirit Box said it, and so that was pretty amazing to me.
That is, yeah, yeah. I do like how it added mine, because it could have just said paintbrush
Mhm.
and left it at that, but
Yeah.
that word of okay, now it's mine, like acknowledging you said it's mine, so mine.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And uh and then what was interesting when I was doing that card game, as we're going through, and of course we have all this on the videos there. As I said, I said, that's right, that's what this is. And so after they called it, they said win. And so they were clearly like, hey, look, I won. This is it. So not just were they validating, but also kind of you could see the character in whoever I was talking to, that it was like, you said this was mine, and then you said I won. So all that's just really cool.
Absolutely, that's amazing. That's amazing. Having that, like you said, it being instantly back. That's just, you know,
Yeah.
for sure it affirms what you're saying, and and knowing what's going on there, and it for sure it was intelligent. Entity was there. It wasn't no residual energy or nothing like that. It was, it knew exactly what you had, and then once you gave it to him, it was like he knew it was his. I like that's pretty cool. I've never heard that that series put together where somebody actually had that happen. That's pretty cool.
I like to test things like that. I like to do a little bit more than just going in and having casual conversation. I like to, at Hey Good Meal we played poker with the mag lights. And I know those are always kind of a controversial type tool, but if you do them, I feel like any tool, a spirit can use any tool, but be creative about how you do it, and try to do it in ways that you can go in and kind of control your environment. And to me, whenever I do some of these experiments, I end up leaving more just blown away than anything, because even if something doesn't work, I consider that a win. Because again, if something worked every time, then you would have to really kind of wonder about what was going on. But with the poker that I played at Hey Good Meal, um, inside of this particular cabin, a guy had been disemboweled for cheating at a poker game. And so I thought, well, let's see if they'll play poker with us. And so we literally sat, and we did this live, set myself and then 3 flashlights kind of around in a circle. And we just dealt the hand, and we actually kept the cards face down. The only cards that I could see were my cards. And when I would deal them, I was showing them to the person and putting it face down. And so we would say, who's got the winning hand? And I know that those flashlights, they can be random, but when they start responding on command, that's what's pretty amazing. And I'm like, who's got the winning hand? And we literally had the flashlights lighting up with who had the winning hand. And you had some people who would bluff, and I would say, do you want another, would you like another card? Does anybody want me to get rid of a card and change it out? And so every now and then they would turn on, and I'd be like, is this the card? And nothing light up. Is this the card? And they want it changed. And so, and you could, again, you could kind of tell the personality of the person by the way things were lighting up. And it was, we really had a lot of people at that point that was watching the show. And even the guy who let us into Hey Good Meal, he was on site, and he was always like, I'm not a big fan of the flashlights. But after that experience and actually sitting there and watching it, he was like, well, that's kind of interesting. You know, maybe, again, it's not necessarily the tool, but coming up with a unique and interesting way. Doing blindfolded dowsing rods. I like to do dowsing rod sessions blindfolded and with noise canceling headphones on when I do these live investigations, because I've always identified with the dowsing rods, but I've had people, if people haven't used them, they look at it and they're like, oh, well, you flick your wrist, you move it, and this and that. But if I'm sitting in a room, Waverly Hills, for an example, and I print out a picture of a doctor, a nurse, a random dog, a child, and tell someone to blindfold me and put these pictures in random spots around the room. And I sit there as I'm blindfolded, don't know where these things are, these tools are, or these pictures are. And I say, if you can see me, and if you can see what's going on around, can you point the dowsing rods to the picture of the child? And the rods move, or even somebody on the live ask a question, and I'm blindfolded wearing noise canceling headphones, and somebody on a live asks a question, and the moderator asks it, and the rods either cross or don't cross, or they point or do something. You're kind of taking that human element out, and you're controlling for your environment. So I love testing things like that, just to take the tools that are there and kind of test the limits and see if we can do something unique, to kind of remove any of that human bias or the idiometric effect. Remove that and see if we can get some interesting and genuine responses.
No, absolutely. And I know I was listening I was on with Lee Hatfield, and something he really affirmed and was really talking about. Like, you got to go through and all the processes and make sure everything, try to debunk it or try to see, and, because, and it's kind of like that's what got me into, kind of watching, like, the old OG original, like, first season Ghost Hunters. They are always trying to make sure they did debunk it, make sure that, like, okay, is it anything? Is it air vent? Is it that? Could it be? And so that's really good that you're really thorough in making sure that, that's, you know, for sure. It's you're doing the right thing then, for sure, because you're making sure that you take all the other variables out, and so it's some kind of
Something
paranormal.
unexplained, at least. I mean, even if you can't say if it's paranormal, being able to say that it's unexplained. We do we do flashlight tours here at the jail and lantern tours at Rugby. And one of the things that we actually really pride ourselves on is with our tours, we take you through and we show you photo, video, and audio evidence of things that happened and where it happened. And so this evidence may be something that either we've captured or something that paranormal teams have captured at the location that they've given to us and allowed us to show on our tour. And so we go in, and I always tell people anything that we're showing you, we're not necessarily saying it's paranormal, but we've gone in and we've tried to debunk it. We've tried to explain it. And if we can't, we consider it unexplained, not so much paranormal, but unexplained. And so by this, then, if someone has an explanation or a question that maybe we haven't thought of, we always take that into consideration. But that's the expectation we put out there. And when the team sends us something, a lot of the time, we're asking certain questions just to make sure that, well, what tool were you using? How many people were in the room? Myself, I'm a solo investigator or a very, very limited. Now, if I'm doing a live at somebody's location, like an antique store or something, obviously there may be somebody from the store that's there that's let me in. But when I'm doing other places, I like to investigate either by myself or investigate with one other person, because that allows me to it makes it much easier to be able to control the environment. I always take the temperature reading outside, the temperature reading inside, what the moon phase is. I take into consideration what's going on around. Is there a lot of traffic around? Is it a deserted area? So we always try to account for all of these different things. What is the weather like at that time? And on my episodes that are pre-recorded, we actually put that throughout the episode. We put who is in the building. We put what the moon phase is, what the weather, what the temperature was, because a lot of that plays into it as to, how well, especially if it's an outside investigation, if it's a clear night, you can hear certain things from miles away if the weather's a certain way. So we really try to account for all that, just so when you're going back and reviewing camera footage, reviewing audio, if it's not a live investigation, that you can take all this stuff into consideration and narrow some things out, because a lot of things can be explained, so we just like to try to at least take as many steps as possible when we're doing that.
Yeah, I do the same thing when I have things happen here at my home every once in a while. The thing I've been messing with most recently is this one closet door I have that sometimes I'll find it open, even though I've been here the whole time and I never heard it make a sound, and I never saw it open. And it's one of those metal closet doors that when you slide it open, it folds on itself.
Mm-hmm.
And I've tried opening it really slowly, and every time I try to open it, it makes some kind of sound. Like it hasn't ever not made a sound when I've tried to open it, even going slowly. And I have a cat as well, but even when she's messing with it, I'll hear her. I'll hear her bumping into it, and so it's just one of those odd things. And I don't know for sure that's paranormal or unexplained, but as far as I can tell, it may be, because I haven't found. I've tried like just letting it slide, like opening it a little bit and let it. No, it doesn't. It doesn't slide. It doesn't do that. Mm-hmm. And I've heard cases of that. A lot of what I do for my own research is just finding reports from people online, on forums and things, and that's one of the things people report sometimes is, they'll find a door open in a place where they were there the whole time, and they didn't hear anything, and they'll just find a door open or even closed. Yeah. And so that to me is really fascinating, because how does that work?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we had a picture get thrown off the wall. We had a team of corrections officers here. It was just two guys from out of Nashville, and they were here at the jail, and we had their EDI box and their REM pods started going off, and they heard a woman say help. And so they were in the kitchen here at the jail, and so they looked out and they opened the door, looked out, and as they were looking out, they had their camera, and something throws a picture 4.5 feet across the room. And you could see it they first called me to come down there, and I was looking at it. And this was during the investigation. And you could actually see on their camera, where we were watching it on the little lens, you could actually see an arm come out. And so we tried for probably 20 minutes to debunk what happened, myself and the team. And we took the picture, put it back up on the wall, actually ended up breaking the frame on it because it kept coming to the ground, and we did everything to it. And our walls there are concrete walls, so you drill into it, and then we also put on all four corners Velcro, and then and on some we also put the museum gum, and so you've got the extra reinforcement with what's drilled into the wall. And this one just happened to have Velcro strips on it, and so you can actually hear it when it comes off the wall. It's just it rips it. And as we tried this picture, we could get it to do nothing other than fall straight down. Even when you would take the side and kind of flip it, this picture would not, it would just kind of flip straight to the ground. It wasn't until you actually forced it and threw it that it flips in midair and goes 4.5 feet across the room, which is what it did on the video. And on the video, when you slow it down, you can clearly see a front half of a body. It's a shadow body come out in an arm as the picture starts to fall down. When it starts to come off the wall, you can see an arm come out, and the arm flings the picture. And so, my business partner came in the next day, and she even tried it. She tried to go in and see if she could figure out what made that picture fall that way. And again, we broke the frame because we spent probably between our 20 minutes and the amount of time that she spent, we probably spent 40 minutes just trying to go in and recreate the situation. Never could do it. And that's just those things we try to do, because it's like at that point you're like, well, it very possibly could be paranormal. They were just very fortunate to have actually caught it, because most of the time you're not that fortunate. Most of the time it ends up a personal experience is usually just a personal experience that's hard to qualify.
Yeah, I've heard things happen right off camera, like as if whoever's there, whatever's there, is just like, I'm not gonna let you see what's happening here, or catch what's happening here, but we're gonna do something, and
Yeah.
it's gonna be right at the right moment where you're not looking at it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. I got a question from way earlier, and before I forget, I don't want to out of the chat. Steve O wants to know, when you ride on your motorcycle, do you ride with a demon bell?
I do have a demon bell, actually, and it's like the tradition says, it has to be a given bell. I have a couple of them actually, but I've got one in particular that a friend gave to me that I have on the bike, because if any bike riders out there know, there's the story of the road gremlins, or the road demons that will come out of the potholes and cause you to wreck your bike if you don't have one of those bells. So that's actually a great question. Not too many people have asked me about that.
Oh wow. Yeah, he'd asked it earlier, and I was like, I got you. I put it in the chat. I was like, I got you, and then it's just been I hadn't had a good break to throw it in there, but so yeah, that's pretty cool. And I had a curiosity too. I don't know if you've have you been, have you been to Shiloh or anything on the other side, this side of Tennessee or?
I have done a few things. I highlighted, now I want to do the Natchez Trace and come down there as well as the Mississippi Blues Trail. That's
Mhm.
one that I would absolutely love to do is some of the stops down along the trail. But I did the old Southern Funeral Home and the old Attala County Jail in Kosciuszko, Mississippi. And of course, that's not there in West Tennessee, but I
Mhm.
have been down there in that area and loved both of those locations. Which, in fact, I don't think people. I think the funeral home sold and opened up as a funeral home again, and then I want to say they tore the old Attala County Jail down at this point. So. I love investigating in that area, and I really want to investigate much more out there.
Yeah, the Natchez Trace is pretty amazing. It's like 411 miles, and um, a couple years ago, I actually went through there and went through the whole thing. And I was like, I'm gonna go. I was like,
Oh, how cool.
I had a week off. I was like, I'm gonna do this, and so I went. Drove all the way down to Natchez, Mississippi, and I started right there. Made sure I started at the beginning. I was real particular. I was like, I don't want to jump in or nothing like that. I want to start from the beginning. So I went down all the way down to Natchez and um, ate some dinner there on the river, and then turned around and came up. And uh, yeah, there's 3 spots you can camp for free on there, and then of course there's hundreds of spots to stop, all kinds of stuff. I stopped at that where they had the house that burnt down. All the thing left is the pillars and stuff. I forget what it's called and everything. I stopped there and got pictures and anything that was all the way through there. So there's so many sites. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
um, my only recommendation on Natchez Trace is just watch your gas because it almost ran out, and there's like nothing on Natchez Trace. There's no gas stations, nothing. You have to get off Natchez to get food or drinks or gas or anything. So yeah, I'll watch your gas because I came close.
And that's scary in and of itself.
Oh
That
yeah,
that's been when people ask, I've had people ask what your bucket list places are and stuff. And it's I mean, obviously I have some, but my favorite would be to actually go do um the Mississippi Blues Trail, excuse me, Natchez Trace, Route 66, hit some of these roads that I can do and actually go in and try to validate or at least share. Maybe I'm not even validating, but share some of these legends and some of these stories because they're full of them. Everything on these roads and trails. I mean, they're known for one reason or another, and to be able to go in and even if it's just a little 20-30 minute paranormal investigation, that's pretty cool. So I'll take that. So I definitely would like to do the Natchez Trace because I've heard some pretty wild stories from there.
yeah. I had a couple. I stayed at that first. Like I said, there's 3 places along there you can camp for free. Like there's campsites you can't pay for camp, but there's 3. It's got and not bad because you got a bathroom, so there's water right
Mhm.
there. There's not on the campsite, whatever. They took the water out, and but it was the first night. It was miserable. Of course, it's right around 4th of July. It was hot and humid, and but I seen a giant orb that night. That night, the first night I was down through there, I seen a giant orb, and as soon as I grabbed my phone, it and disappeared. And I'm
Of
like,
course.
well, it's time to go to bed now. But I got up the next morning and drove around. I'm like, okay, well, let me try to, probably kids or something. And I drove around. Unless somebody got up super early before I did, there was only like 3 people camping there that night, and I was one of them. And we're all on one side, so there was nobody on that side of the place that the light came through. And then another time, I was just driving down it. I was actually being nice and being a DD, and um, I seen it looked like, I swear on everything, it looked like a witch doctor phasing in and out on the corner of the road. And I'm
Oh
like, you
my
see that? They're like, what are you doing? I'm like, I was like, what? Never mind here. You're too
Well, I
far
was-
gone anyway. I haven't drank like 15 years, so I was like, doggone it. I was like, wish, uh, could have had some, reaffirmation of that. I'm like, and I'm losing my mind or I'm tired or something. But yeah, it was. I've seen a few things and heard many stories, of course, as I'm sure you have, on the Natchez. But because there's, burial mounds and stuff, there's all kinds of
yeah.
mounds. I took pictures of all that and
Mhm.
waterfalls, all kinds of stuff. It's all the way through there. It's amazing space and everything. But yeah, yeah, if you get a chance for sure, just wash your gas.
And right now I ride a Sportster, so I have to watch my gas anyways, because with that small peanut tank, it's kind of I have to be very aware of it.
I bet.
Yeah, yeah. But no, those type of places are what I really, really enjoy traveling, especially on the motorcycle, and then especially just out traveling, seeing, what you can find, the roadside monuments. Um, I one of my favorite episodes that I covered, I believe it was in season 3, and it was the 1944 troop train accident, derailment. And I learned about that when I was I was putting together a haunted motorcycle ride, a ghost biker ride that we do from time to time, and was going up 25 West and just happened to see this little 8x8 sign tacked to a post that said 1944 troop train viewing area, or troop train disaster viewing area. Well, on this mountain road, there was no, at this point, there was no side that you could pull off on. So I'm like, what is this and what are you seeing? And so when I got home, I started researching the story, and it was where some fresh recruits had died in a train derailment in the Jellicoe Narrows. And so I ended up going back up there. We added it to our haunted motorcycle ride, but I ended up going back there. I had to go probably about a mile up the road just to find a place to pull off. And I had to hike down. And I mean, some of these mountain roads, you just got trash people have thrown out. You've got all this stuff. So I didn't know what I was going to encounter. So I went with a friend, and I did it during the day. And so it was a daytime investigation. I hiked down, and it just so happened when I went, there had been a lot of rain. So once I got down to the river, an area, the walkway part, it wasn't even a walkway, but the area to get to the viewing spot had flooded out. So I sat down and I did this investigation. It was so simple, and we had to be real creative because you're outside, so you've got the elements. We've got the road up on the mountains. We've got the water right beside us. So we were relying more on like alarming type tools and the spirit box. And the only thing that I got on the spirit box was the word waterfall. And I thought, okay, well, that's kind of interesting. And so the very next week when I came back, the water had receded. And so when I hiked on back, I found the actual spot where the train had derailed. And at one point in time, the Boy Scouts had put a monument up on top of the derailment part. And that was what you were supposed to be able to see from that little sign before the trees grew up, was this monument on the rocks. And so, anyways, when I got over there at the spot where the derailment took place, there was a waterfall. It was kind of wild. And so I thought, well, that's pretty neat. It's a simple piece of evidence, but it was truly intelligent communication. And so I loved that episode because it gave me the opportunity at the end of the episode to go in, and I found photos of the men who had died in the train derailment in their uniforms. And so we were able to run that at the end of the episode, really to just kind of show the to humanize, what we were talking about and what we were experienced. And I thought, this is a story that people need to know, and they need to learn about more than just a little 8x8 sign that's there. So I loved putting that together because I didn't know anything about it, and I was really honored to be able to share those guys' stories.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I just wonder, like stuff like that's like kind of like what I did. Started doing the podcast and stuff like that, and doing like almost a lot of my shorts and stuff. It's when I actually like, unless I'm pulling clips off of shows, but if I'm actually recording, it's just like random information and stuff. Like it's like I didn't know that, so maybe somebody else don't know that, and that's pretty cool, and it is important, like we were saying earlier, to get these, get these tales, get these stories out,
Mhm.
because the ones, a lot of people don't know, and it's wild, even people that's been small towns somewhat, but like a bigger town, like a lot of people don't even know the history of whatsoever, or even know what parts of the places are. Like I know I was born in Memphis and stuff, and and I tell people, I was like, well, what is there to do? Blah blah blah. I said, well, it's like matters what you like. I was like, have you been here? It's like,
Mhm.
well, where in the, where is that at? I never heard of that. I'm
Mhm.
like, well, it's been here for 60 years, but it's over here, and ask them, well,
Oh, did we lose Ricky?
Looks like he froze up.
Ah, the internet's having fun with us tonight, or something. But yeah, no, I guess until he comes back, I'll just keep going. But yeah, no, I do agree. I mean, that's one of the things. Not so much. I haven't really done a ton of historic research because it's a lot more of visual stuff. But I mean, just in terms of getting people's experiences out there, I think has been one of the main things for what I do with my own show. Before I found Ricky and he found me, and I started being on here with him, just sharing people's experiences. And because one thing I found is it's amazing. You may not hear about them all the time, but if you look around online, you can find sites where people are posting about their experiences every day.
Mhm.
I mean, there's new posts in multiple places every day about experiences, and that's part of but it doesn't get out there unless you look for it or unless people go and find them and share them in places like this.
Absolutely. And I love hearing that's probably one of my favorite parts about being a location owner is that we get to meet all these great people, and if we're lucky, they share with us their experiences that they've had at the jail and at the Village of Historic Rugby. And so I love hearing all of that, and I love being able to kind of compare those experiences. Sometimes someone will mention, wow, we had this really crazy thing happen. Whether it be footsteps. We have some of the best residual footsteps that I've ever heard here at the jail. And by talking to different people, we've been able to find that there's specific times that this tends to happen, which leads us to think that it's probably a former jailer that would have been walking through and doing his rounds. And there is someone also that kind of does this exasperated sigh of just like, ugh, and it's wild. People will hear that, and they'll be like, "Oh, we got this, like, just this sigh of exasperation," and it's like, "Oh my gosh, where did you get that?" And then or they'll say, "We heard this sound," and I'm like, "Did it sound like this?" And to be able to sit and essentially be able to document the type of activity and some of the similarities, it makes that really kinda hard to deny, and it just one person or one team starts to validate all these other teams, and they start to validate the experiences that we've been having, and, I absolutely love that because I feel like we're able to do true paranormal research here because it's great to be able to go into a location, but a one and done type situation. Just, I mean, it's more about experience at that point, or it's more about your experiences are helping. If you pass those along and compile it, it's like for the greater, uh, not the greater good, but it's the greater picture there. So, with what we're doing, we are in these locations, the jail especially, we're in here between myself and my business partner, Christy, we're in here